All right, I think we're going to kick things off, guys. Thank you all for joining and coming to listen into our panel talk today on what's driving developers and builders to Hyperliquid. Um, it's a super fascinating ecosystem. I think there's really no paid marketing, no real builder incentives, yet it's been one of the fastest growing chains that crypto has seen in history. Attracting teams of all sizes across infra, consumer apps, and DeFi. Um, but we're here today to figure out like what's the main pull, like what brings them to build on Hyperliquid. Is it its core or its unique architecture and primitives that it's set forth? Maybe it's expected future value from rewards. Um, or maybe it's just something that's harder to measure, like the ethos, vision, or team behind Hyperliquid. But we brought builders from all over the ecosystem today to chat what brought them to Hyperliquid, what are some of the challenges that they still see today, and what's proven to be true and super fun to build on Hyperliquid. So with that said, we'd love to pass it over to our following panelists to introduce themselves and share what they've been working on.
My name is Salman, co-founder and CTO at Button. We are building Bitcoin yield products on top of Hyperliquid.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andrei from LI.FI. I'm leading DeFi efforts there, and for about what LI.FI does, we are an on-chain orchestration layer. So think of any token on any chain to any token on any chain seamlessly in a one-click action.
Hey guys, I'm Ling from No Limit Holdings. I'm an investor at No Limit Holdings. We just raised our second fund mid last year, and so we're actively deploying. So if you're building projects, we'd love to chat. I'm also the creator of Supercexy. If you guys heard of Supercexy, we actually integrated with LI.FI. It was super easy to integrate. It was amazing integration.
Hey everyone, I'm Christian. I'm the head of ecosystem at Superform. Superform is the user-owned neobank. So it is like a neobank on crypto rails. You can sign up with a Google account and deposit from your bank and then earn yield and spend that in the real world. Powering that neobank, we have a really cool protocol that's built on smart accounts and hooks. So you can do any action in DeFi in one single transaction. And then one more thing we have is a vault product built on top of that. So anybody can create their own vault using that in Superform cross-chain smart account infrastructure that we built and then distribute it through our mobile app.
Awesome. I guess to kick things off, like I had mentioned, there's really no paid integrations, not a ton of support from the foundations or incentives to really build on Hyperliquid. Maybe Salman, we'll start with you, but what was that first like moment or realization that made you feel like you wanted to dedicate resources to building on Hyperliquid?
For me, it's like a little bit personal maybe, but I think like the Hyperliquid TGE and like how it happened and kind of like the environment that it happened in, I think it was like somewhere between like the Trump coin and like Melania coin. And it's really easy to be kind of like cynical maybe about crypto in general and how it's kind of like rotating out of a job. And I was like, man, why should I spend my time in this like industry? And I think in some ways like Hyperliquid is kind of like a rallying point that like for people that want to build like real products with real use cases, real revenue, real users, that's kind of like the place to do it. So for me, it was mostly that.
Very cool. And then maybe for like Andrei and Christian, what was your moment of realization? Were you guys getting a lot of feedback from your users, or was it some of like the architectural primitives that are allowing you to build new features on top of this protocol?
Yeah, sure. We are very much demand driven. So whenever we see a new chain or a new protocol that's super interesting and the community is asking for it, we're definitely going to go there, and we try to always be first. Now, before even Hyperliquid was, this huge and, the TGE moment, LI.FI was the de facto depositing into Hyperliquid. So I always like to give the example, if you've done a transaction in DeFi, it is very likely that you've used us under the hood. And one of the examples is exactly Hyperliquid, because when you were depositing a stablecoin into USDC on Arbitrum into the perps venue, you were doing it through LI.FI. So for us, it was a collaboration that started way before the chain launched.
Very cool. And like Christian, specifically for you, I think you guys recently dedicated resources towards Hyperliquid. what was that moment compared to maybe expanding to other ecosystems that are out there today?
Personally, I've been a big fan of Hyperliquid like for a long time, and I've been like pushing internally to get Superform to support it. We for the past like year, we've been really focused on like this version 2 of Superform and getting this new like vault infrastructure product out, and we didn't really have the bandwidth to like support new chain launches. So now that we have all these products live, we have the protocol, we have the web app and the mobile app, then now it's like, where do we allocate resources? And I've been championing Hyperliquid like for a long time. So when we had to go pick, hey, what's the next ecosystem that we want to deploy to? It was like kind of became a no-brainer. We also have some interest from like curators who want to build on top of Superform, and they like Hyperliquid too. So looking at like kind of the newer ecosystems that are emerging, what made the most sense, I think like I was always pushing for Hyperliquid and finally got the team's buy-in, along with having that kind of external pressure from these curators. It was a super easy choice.
Very cool. And then Chris, to you, I mean, you're both a builder and an investor. What excites you about both building and also investing into Hyperliquid teams?
I think the transparency of Hyperliquid was the thing that got me hooked into building Hyperliquid. But as soon as I started playing with the APIs, like I think there's a lot of leaderships in like Jeff's and team putting a lot of opinionated like design choices into how the tech works. So it's not like a general purpose chain, but like they actually make a lot of very cool, very smart, like small details things that are super opinionated that actually I think guides, you know, teams on how to build on Hyperliquid. And like in terms of investments, I think because Hyperliquid doesn't really have like grants, the teams that are building on Hyperliquid are actually trying to like make a business work. So like there's like we're seeing very little like just like grants farming on Hyperliquid, but like every team is actually trying to like build a real business on Hyperliquid. So I think that's super exciting.
And then like following up with that question, what are primitives like core writer, portfolio margin, or BFT consensus? How does that like sway your decisions on like what can be built? And also, is that a main draw or is it other things like feedback from your users? Is it the liquidity or maybe even a different type of incentive?
So I think like things like core writers and things like that are really cool because like you just imagine like if you can build something around Binance, like if you can tap into Binance like order book, like what would you build? I think there's a bunch of things you can build out of it. So yeah, I think it's exciting.
Yeah, and I know Salman, we had briefly talked about portfolio margin. Can you share a little bit more about what that means and what it may enable for the end user?
Yeah, so for us, like we're building yield products, and what you want is capital efficiency, right? And so like Hyperliquid has like a pretty like strong commitment to building like capital efficient margin systems. And so like portfolio margin is like one example of that. But you know, HIP3 cross margin is another thing that they're working on. Now you kind of see outcome markets come to. And so like the ability to cross margin all those things gives you like very, very capital efficient structures, and that means you can build better yield products. And I think like maybe to add to that is that like the rate of pace of like new features showing up on Hypercore and therefore in the precompiles is like pretty awesome as like a builder. You want to like invest your time on building on a chain that's actually like moving the ball forward. And so if you built on some of these EVM chains, those are like largely the same for the past like 4 or 5 years. But if you're building on Hyperliquid, the team is coming out with new and new features, new use cases, and you can benefit from that as a builder.
Very cool. Almost in a similar vein, Chris, before we hopped up here, we were briefly chatting about how the core architectural advancements of Hyperliquid could allow new primitives from an AI agent perspective. Can you maybe share some thoughts or ideas on like what's possibly new and what we can maybe see in the future with this very permissionless based chain?
Yeah, so we recently open sourced a new tool called Hyperliquid CLI. So it's a command line interface for interacting with Hyperliquid. So we work with AI a lot at NLH, and one thing we've learned is that there are primarily 3 ways to interact with a computer. One is a browser, right? So human, we click on the browser UI. That's how we interact with web applications. The second way is API calls, right? But with API calls, you have to like write your own custom scripts to like interact with the API. So it's still not that agent friendly. And then third way is CLI. Like agents are super good at running like bash commands, CLI, and so on. And so we built Hyperliquid CLI to help agents trade more on Hyperliquid. But to your point on like what Hyperliquid unlocks for AI agents, I think it's permissionlessness of Hyperliquid, because like you guys have seen like the AI agents like trading arena like a couple months ago. There's like some guy funded like 10K into like a bunch of AI models and just let them compete. That was like super fun to watch. But there's a reason why that's on Hyperliquid and not on like a centralized exchange, because it's fully like KYC free. You don't have to like you can just like anyone can spin up a wallet like in like a second, and like your AI can now trade without any of the compliance regulatory compliance like concerns. So I think like the permissionlessness of Hyperliquid is going to unlock a lot of these experiments. And I also know a lot of like hedge funds or like liquid funds and so on are actively trying to like find ways to integrate AIs into their workflows, not just for like like VC investments, but also for like liquid tradings. And like I feel like Hyperliquid is the easiest place for them to like set up something to like get things going with like AI investments. And so I think a lot of people are still trying to crack the alpha here in terms of like how to effectively use AI to trade. But I think once some kind of like framework comes out that allows you to trade easy with like AI agents, I think Hyperliquid could be the core venue for this type of activities to happen.
Very interesting. And then similar for you, Chris, like you guys allow users to deploy their own vault strategies. Do you envision a world where they can also like build their own agents and use AI workflows with respect to Superform?
Yeah, 100%. We actually designed the super vaults to be like agent friendly, because we kind of have this vision of the future where your DeFi portfolios are not going to be managed by humans anymore. It's too complicated even for like sophisticated actors, really. So it makes perfect sense for agents to be doing this when you're dealing with all these different chains and all these different protocols. So yeah, 100%. We've designed it so that eventually agents can plug into this. I think the future kind of looks like I'll have some kind of chat interface, and I'll talk with a bot, and it'll prompt me to kind of understand my investor portfolio or personality profile rather. And then it'll like construct a custom like super vault strategy for me, and then allocate my funds accordingly. And then each user or similar group of users has their own custom vault strategy based on their investor profile, and automatically reallocating between different strategies.
Very interesting. And similar, like Hyperliquid's moving really fast. It's constantly growing. They're introducing new proposals. As a builder, do you guys feel like there's pressure on you to live up to the legend per se that like Hyperliquid has set forth, to kind of build like a similar experience, super performant, fast, snappy, and just like an all-around great user experience?
I think we should all like strive for that, right? But definitely we do take inspiration from Hyperliquid on like the ethos side as well, like kind of like the purity of it, and some of the fundamentals that make it so special and unique compared to some of the other things out there. And we probably have a long way to go to get to that point. But we love we were going for this like user ownership kind of angle, and letting people like participate freely. Some of the non-custodial and permissionless natures of Hyperliquid, like something we want to stay true to. We have this like stance against like centralized entities, and really like pushing our users to have control of their funds and this freedom and flexibility. In terms of Hyperliquid moving like really fast, our protocol is also designed to be very flexible and extensible. So any like evolutions that Hyperliquid makes, we are able to kind of keep up as well. So yeah, we're along for the ride and excited to be part of it.
I actually have a tip for everyone that is building on Hyperliquid. So 2 tips actually. Go into the Discord of Hyperliquid and just like keep monitoring all of the new things going on in their API channels. Because Supercexy, we actually had a 2 hours crash because we were using some undocumented API, and they just like changed the API like without notifying us, right? So pay attention to API channel. And the second thing is actually just play with the API a lot. So fun story, I actually caught the HIP4 before anyone posted anything on Twitter. because I was working on the CLI tool and I saw this like outcomes object on the API and like, but it was empty at the time. So I was like, this is interesting. It sounds like HIP4. So we were able to like, include that into some conversations way earlier than anyone else on chain. And we also use that kind of like intel to help our protocol position ahead of an official announcements. So I highly encourage like everyone to like just like monitor the Discord channel of Hyperliquid and just play with the API. Like you often see, because Hyperliquid builds in public in some way. So like you'll find a lot of things just like playing with the API. So everyone should definitely do that.
And then Andrei, maybe for you in like a similar vein, like you guys are already plugged in and have very strong partnerships with teams like Hyperbeat and Rabby. Do you predict that like Hyperliquid's going to eat at a lot of the cross-chain flows we see today, in addition to maybe some of the user feedback you've gotten?
Well, I mean, we definitely follow and see those flow trends that you're mentioning. Hyperliquid did take the podium in the past few months, at least in Li.FI's flows. So as I said, we are demand driven. Hyperliquid wasn't really a bet for us. It was something obvious that we had to do. And also we also see that our customers, which weren't necessarily on Hyperliquid, they're now waking up and they are all deploying there. So for us as an infrastructure protocol, it's super easy because we have already everything out of the box prepared for them. So, we work with folks like Supercexy, which are like super native on Hyperliquid, but also like the big wallets, which they also need to serve their users for the in and outs of Hyperliquid.
Totally. I guess to circle back to like early builder journeys, you guys have all played like a role being super early to Hyperliquid. Can you share maybe a story of like what it looked like when you first started, what the like tooling and infra looks like today, and maybe like what are some of the still like the biggest bottlenecks of building on Hyperliquid?
I think I can at least remember from when Hyper EVM was launched, everyone was kind of like hitting read limit APIs, and like somebody from the community just said, okay, cool, I'm gonna quickly fork like nanoref and make like a read-only indexer for people to use. And I think stuff like that's like super cool. It's all homegrown, and kind of like Hyperliquid maybe like leaving like a gap like in tooling allows like everybody from the ecosystem to really get to like plug in and contribute. And I think like that ultimately like creates like a really good builder community. It kind of reminds me maybe of like early days Solana, when like a lot of tooling and sort of like infra didn't exist, and a lot of people had to kind of jump in and contribute and build things. And that's kind of like what kept them through like the bear market as well. You had like a lot of true believers that believed in the mission of Solana, and that really kept them rolling through. And I think it can be similar for HL.
The beauty of it is that it's not just a chain, or at least we don't treat it just as a chain. It's a whole product. We have a dedicated product manager that is only handling Hyperliquid. So for us, we can productize this in so many ways. For example, like opening perp positions or aggregating Hyperliquid perps with other with other perp venues and offering this, as an SDK to our partners. So it's a lot of other things that, it's more modular than just a chain, and we don't treat it as such.
I think the things that are probably missing, mic working? I think the things that are probably missing is because of how co-writer works, it's much more complicated than just like an on-chain simulation. So like I've done personally like 4 or 5 like public projects on Hyperliquid, and more like private projects. And like the things I struggle with like EVM is like, if you want to simulate a transaction with like co-writer on like a testnet, it's like not possible. I would love to see like more people do things like Tenderly, where like they have their own environments for like customizing the simulation environment, and like you can simulate a co-writer transaction, for example. I think that would be like, and I think that's something a lot of developers would pay for. But other than that, I feel like the tools around like Hypercore is actually pretty well built right now. Like you have a bunch of SDKs in different programming languages that are pretty up to date. I contribute to some of these SDKs as well to help them get up to date. So I think like Hyper EVM like could try to catch up a little bit more, but I think on Hypercore side it's actually pretty good these days.
I was gonna say transaction simulator as well. one thing that took a while to get Superform on Hyperliquid was kind of the lack of infrastructure support because of the way the team operates. In that, like, they're not going to pay any of these teams to come in to deploy there, so you kind of have to go in because you're bullish and excited about Hyperliquid and you want to be part of it, which most teams did. Like, Superform has a few infrastructure requirements to deploy in a chain, and almost all of them have been fulfilled by other teams who just again wanted to be part of the Hyperliquid journey. But yeah, the one big missing piece is a transaction simulator. So we're kind of trying to build that in-house right now to support our use case. But if anyone here is building that on Hyperliquid, that'd be nice to know. Would love to see that. Yeah, you got something for me?
Open source that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we actually did. Super side note, but we did like this Hyperliquid community hackathon several months ago, and there were some teams that built some transaction simulators, which are open source and available. I don't know if they're like being actively maintained or anything, but that's actually our first point of inspiration. We're trying to build this in-house, but yeah, we'll open source it for you if it works out. I'll let you know.
Well, it's good to know. I mean, like, obviously, for Alchemy as an infra provider, we'd love to like hear this feedback of what's challenging and potentially build APIs to fill those gaps. I think like another thing to touch on is everyone here plays a role both in like the DeFi interface world, but can also play a role like with institutional adoption and gaining more traction from Web 2 users. How do you guys envision maybe some of this institutional adoption coming in and both catering to the DeFi players and also large institution and banks?
I think that a big merge is happening right now between DeFi and TradFi, if you want to name it that way. I think most of the things in DeFi are solved, like bridging and swapping. However, most TradFi players want to access those users, which are kind of stalling right now and are all on chain. So it's a big pool of capital that can be accessed. So I think that probably, if you want me to be more specific, neobanks is probably a good answer for, where the next big wave will come from, because neobanks want to make more money, and they will obviously want to offer their users perps and earn products which are being built on Hyperliquid, and Hyperliquid being like the first one, it's obviously gonna be a no-brainer for them.
I think for us, at least, like building yield products, one thing we found is that the transparency of Hyperliquid actually helps a lot in selling clients. The ability for like anybody to go in and verify the chain state, understand why liquidations happen, and that ultimately allows for better risk underwriting and therefore like better capital management. I think like the things that are missing maybe is more how like institutions maybe like to custody assets and how they get margin against their assets. I think we'll start to see maybe like prime brokers start to give margin on chain for Hyperliquid, maybe for collateral held off chain somewhere. Let's say like in a copper or something like that. I think that's like kind of necessary for more institutional adoption.
Anything you want to add, Christian? Or
I mean, I talked about it briefly, how like some more like institutional demand is what kind of drove Superform to want to be on Hyperliquid if we're picking like a chain to deploy on. I think they find it like really, really interesting. Like there's a lot of like novel things you can do on Hyperliquid you can't do anywhere else, and I think that has it's starting to attract more like institutions. And I think the key is in creating the proper like tools and interfaces for them to be able to like interact with it, right? So on our side, we're trying to create this like super easy like vault management system so that anybody can come in and like create their own product. They don't have to do a lot of work. It's like plug and play essentially. So just making it as easy as possible for them to participate is like our contribution to that. But there's a lot of other things that institutions need to get on board, of course.
makes sense.
I'm going to show a portco here for a second. I think privacy would be a major theme for institution adoption. That's why we invested in Silhouette. For those who don't know, Silhouette is a dark pool solution on Hyperliquid. So like if you want to trade spot assets, if you want to buy BTC or like someone wants to sell BTC, they would offset the trades in a dark pool through smart contracts, and they would piggyback on the liquidity on Hyperliquid. So all of the trades that don't have enough liquidity, they would just use liquidity on Hyperliquid. I think like privacy would be a important factor for institutions to go trade more on Hyperliquid.
Totally. And I think like we're running up on time here, but I'd like to ask two last questions. I think from like a core protocol perspective and having things like builder codes that are that can only be applied to facilitating trades on Hypercore. Do you think this is going to create like a flywheel and force other EVM chains to implement Hypercore features and kind of like take over some of what they've built?
So the question is, are other chains going to like try to create their own like builder code experience, or are they going to try to utilize what Hyperliquid's already built?
I would love to hear which side of the argument you're on.
I would guess that most chains like wouldn't have the capability to do that. Some will probably explore it because it's interesting. I haven't thought about it too much, but my guess is more of them would just like capitulate to Hyperliquid than the other way around. But I'm biased.
I think the builder code approach definitely has inspired a lot of different teams to like do similar things, right? Like even Polymarket implemented like builder code like fairly recently, and they built like a leaderboard to show all of the builder code revenue to show. So I think I don't know. I feel like again, like I think like Jeff and team like has a lot of opinionated design choices that if you think about it, it's like actually super cool. Like how the API key works, authorization. I'm seeing a lot of like people like building things that are subconsciously being inspired by like these things that Hyperliquid is building. So I think we'll see much more like builder code style apps. I'm not sure if that would bring more volume back to like Hyperliquid. So I'm not sure if there's a flywheel here, but I think like the Hyperliquid tech is actually a leading like indicator, inspiring a lot of different teams building.
I agree with that. However, on the other hand, I don't think that it's that much extendable to other scaling solutions or to other chains. So I do think that there are gonna be more builder codes coming out, and they have a great usage, but I just don't see it extendable to Arbitrum or Optimism right now, at least.
Yeah, I don't know about like the existing EVM chains if they're gonna like kind of chase the same things, but I think certainly we'll have like more chains that have like opinionated block space, that have like a very specific worldview on how they think the chain should work. I think we'll see a lot more of that to follow in Hyperliquid's path.
Awesome. And then I guess to wrap things up, Chris, you shared some good feedback around like logging into the Discord chats, paying attention to the API channels. What other advice would you give to early builders building on Hyperliquid? And would love like your honest feedback here on maybe what's challenging and what to look out for.
So I think just build, right? Like the conversations I've had a lot is like people would come to me and be like, hey, like I'm trying to build on Hyperliquid, but like the team isn't responding to my message. I'm like, just build. Like the ethos here is basically like you don't need permission to like build things, just build things. So like just try to build things, try to break things. If you need help, like my DM is open. You can chat with me afterwards. But just keep building, right? Just keep like messing around with the API. I think think of it this way: try to break the chain, right? Like as you try to break the chain, you try a bunch of different things, and you realize how solid the tech is, and you also learn all of the things that maybe aren't even documented on the API. So just keep building and talk to me if you would love to connect or need help with building.
Yeah, I would just echo that to say like, don't expect like a ton of support from the Hyperliquid like core team, but that's kind of been outsourced to the community more broadly. Like there's so many people who've decided to build on Hyperliquid just because like they believe in what Jeff and his team are creating, and they've kind of gone through the ringer and done all these things. So like you have this whole ecosystem of people who can support you. So don't be like, oh, Julian's not replying to me, right? Be like, there's like, no, hey, like there's like you can hit up Chris, you can hit up a bunch of people who have been here and done that, and they can help you out, or just go read the docs, right?
Community.
Yeah, I think I'd just add, like, have a lot of agency. Like, no one's going to help you. No one's going to hold your hand. But, like, all the information is kind of there for you to succeed. And then be nimble. Like, every new hit proposal is, like, $1 billion company idea, like, in itself. And, as long as you're, like, in the space, stay in the game, I think you'll find some success.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to give a round of applause for all of our panelists today.
Sorry, can I give just a shout out to Hyperdrive? I'm not supposed to be here today, but Matt from Hyperdrive couldn't make it, and so I'm the last minute arrangement. But just want to give a shout out to Hyperdrive because they deserve it. Yeah. Woo!
And if you guys do have any questions, panelists will be bouncing around, so feel free to ask questions. Also, from a sport perspective, always feel free to reach out to Alchemy with questions. We're happy to help you in your early stages and help you scale. And also have a lot of documentations and resources that we could share over. So keep the requests coming. We want to learn about what's been the most challenging to build and help fill those gaps. Thank you all for showing up.
Thank you.